In the CodeIgniter docs, we're at the session class, and if you've used sessions in PHP, they're pretty easy to use. But there are some benefits to using the CodeIgniter session class, and I'll show you. If I scroll down a little ways, it says, what is session data? Now, it stores a unique user ID for the session ID, and they say it's very strong random with very strong entropy, which means it's very unlikely to repeat the encryption. It's hashed with MD5 and regenerated every 5 minutes, and it contains some basics about the users. It's some added security, and that's good. So the only difference really is that getting data from the session is a little different. You call this session user data and then the value. So in this array above here, if I wanted to get session ID, I would just put session ID right there. And adding data is where we set user data. And you just pass in an array if you'd like, or you can pass in one value at a time. The only caution here, luckily they put it in red, is cookies can only hold 4 kilobytes of data, and we can't exceed that capacity. Now, in most cases, you don't really need to worry, because 4 kilobytes for what we're actually going to put in a session is a lot. We only need like a couple of values. And it shows you how to unset it. So let's get to it. The first thing we need to do is go to our config and then our config PHP. And I'm just going to press Control F to find, and I'll just look for encryption key. And you need an encryption key for to use the session class, because CodeIgniter will encrypt the key for you. And this is good because if two people using CodeIgniter, they'll never have the same encryption key. So you could put whatever you like in there. For now, I guess I'll put just a random string. I'll just say junior dash 456. You can put anything you'd like, and it can be something crazy. Okay, you just have to set something in there. Okay. If we scroll down below a little bit more, we can change the cookie name if we'd like. I'm going to leave it default, but if you do have a problem with it, you could change it. The table name is if you decide to save sessions to a table, and I'm not going to do that. So what I'll do now is I'll just close this guy out and open our controllers. So to log in, the way I'm going to do that for now is open the user controller, and these are all test functions below. But what I'm going to do is a function called login. So I'll say public function login. Okay. And I'm going to load the session class, but I could say this load library session. Well, I actually want to have that loaded all the time, to be honest. And it saves me a lot of time just to go to config auto load and load the session library like this. I know we're jumping to these configurations a lot, but if you look back, we're not really in and out of them too much. It's just that I have to show you step by step what we're doing. Otherwise, you would just toss in your values here and you'd be done with it. So don't be discouraged just if it feels like a lot of configuration right now. You'll get the hang of it. And I guarantee CodeIgniter will save you a lot of time. So for the login, what we're going to do is a get, and we're actually going to post stuff to it. Before we get to that, we want to play with our session class. So let's say this session user data. There is no user data yet, so I'll say set user data. And here I'll pass in an array, and I'll say user ID will be 1, like that. And I'll go to, I can go ahead and close that page and refresh, and we want to get the user data and print it out. So this session user data. I'll say session equals that, and I'll just print R it out. And I accidentally loaded the wrong page. I need to go to user/login. User/login. And it says missing argument 1 for session user data. Let's see. On line 19. It's because I'm using this, but I want to get all user data, but I was treating this like it was for getting all user data, and that's only one value, like that. But I need to put all user data, like so. And I'll refresh the page, and we have all this stuff. See this session ID? It's pretty encrypted and prevents other people from manipulating it. So if I go to my Chrome developer tools, I believe I can see a cookie somewhere in here. Let's see. Forgive me, it's not this area. It's actually in your settings. So settings, and I'll just search for cookie and content settings, all cookie and site data, and I'll just look for workspace, and we have 3 cookies, and we have a CodeIgniter session. So I know we had to do quite a bit of digging to get here, but here's the CodeIgniter session data here, and the content, that's just URL encoded. So remember the CI session in the config? That's just what it's called. You could change it to something else if you wanted to prevent people from knowing you were using CodeIgniter, but I wanted to show you this, and we could remove it, and then if I go back and refresh, you see I get a totally different hash. So that's the gist of a session. What we're going to do is give us the ability to log in the user. So in our dashboard, we want to confirm that the user's logged in. Otherwise, we don't want to let them in there. So in my index page, actually, in fact, in every single page under dashboard, the user needs to be logged in. So to do that, I'm just going to do a construct, public function construct. And I know we only have 2 methods in here, but further down the road, perhaps we'll have more. But this will just take care of it all in one shot. So I'll say this session user data user ID, okay, and I'll say user ID equals that, and I'll say if user ID is false, then we're going to redirect to heck, we could just do logout. I'll just say logout. Okay, and since we're using the session class now, instead of doing session destroy, we'll say this session destroy. The session's a little weird, some of the strings you have to get used to, but you want to do this instead of session destroy because this is actually a cookie. And this has to be this logout. Okay, so if there's no ID, we'll just run the logout. So if there's like a session or something going on, or they try to manipulate it, just make sure we delete anything that's in there. So going back, let's try to go. I want to delete this session first, so let me try to reload this. I wish they had a refresh button on there. Workspace. Workspace. Well, I'll refresh the page. If anyone knows a better way of doing this, do tell. There we go. So CI session, and I'll just scroll down and remove it. And now that we have no session, let's go to the dashboard page. Cool, and it takes us back to the login. So that'll be a nice little way to secure us from having invalid people entering our page. Um, so with this set, we're going to want to make sure we set the user ID in the session when they successfully log in. So back in the user controller, when they log in, we're actually going to set user data like this. Now this is going to come from MySQL, and we will get to that. We're going to have to take a look at the post class next.